Hello, welcome on Travels and Code channel. In this video we will talk about objects, everything what you need to know about objects. Our plan for today is we will talk about how to create object properties and object methods, what's the difference, how we can get access to these properties. We'll talk about computed properties and a few ways how we can check if property exists in the object and how we can use different loops for going through all properties in the object. So let's start. We already discussed properties when we discussed data types, but it was briefly. In this video we will talk more deeply. So object is some kind of container. Comparing with primitive data types, in primitive data types each primitive data type saves just its own one value and that's it. Object can save different data types inside. So imagine it's a container which has different type. For example, let's start from the beginning how we can create object. There are two ways to create object. Two most popular is through new object, it's object constructor, but this syntax we don't use very often. The most popular is through object literal, this with using figure brackets. It's the most popular. Then, in both cases, the result will be the same. Let's try console log me and myself. Let's run it, and we will see that it's the same result. Okay, what can we do with object properties? As I mentioned before, object can contain different values inside. So let's create me object and what it can contain. For example, my name, also its property string type, age for example. This one it will be number. The next one, for example, is YouTuber, true. This one is boolean, and that's it, for example, for now. And in the end I will have comma because of it's a good practice to put comma in the end of the last property. And how we can access this property? So let's try console log. The first one what we can do, we can console the whole object. Let's run it, and we will see that we have everything. But in case we need to get access to something specific, to some specific property, we can access through name of the object, and then through dot we can put the property we need. For example, name. Let's clear and run. So, and we have name. Everything else was hidden. The same case if we need to get age. Is notation through the dot, but sometimes we can use another approach. Let's imagine another case. We have a bit extended object with a property. So for property we can use any name. There are some limitations, we will talk about them later, but also we can use more complex properties. For example, it might be with the spaces. So we created a bit more complex property. Yes, it might be a string, and the property value is true, is boolean. So in case we will try to access through the dot, for example me, I will copy. So let's try what we will have. We will have error because of it tries to access will. We haven't such properties, and then we have some syntax error. How we can solve this problem? In this case we can use this approach with square brackets. And now let's try. So true, we get this result. So there are two ways to get to access to property. Is through dot notation in case we are using one word as a name, and in case we have a bit more complex word we will use square brackets. But from the best practices it's not a good approach to use such big keys. So it's a key. So object is built based on a key value pair. So we have a key and we have value of this key. Also it calls the whole its property. So it's not the best approach to use such properties, such keys with spaces and long names, but it's possible. Another what I want to show you is how we can delete this property. For example, let's try is YouTuber. What we can do, or let's continue with this one, let's delete it. The first what we can think is we can assign undefined value. Let's try. Let's reassign new value, it will be undefined. Let's try, and let's try console the whole object. So we will see that value will be undefined, but we still have this property in our object. How we can delete it or check if it exists? So the first what I want to mention is in operator. We can check is any property exists in object. So let's try if this key in this object and again let's write and it exists. So we assigned value undefined, but it still exists. How we can change it? We can use to delete any property. We need to use special words delete, its operator, and then we need to put what we need to delete. We can put in this case with square brackets, and again let's try it. Let's run again. So we have just one exist and that's it. We don't have it anymore. Let's check. Run again. So we have this object and we don't have property, this default property. So as you see, in checks if property was assigned to undefined. Anyway, we have this property and the operator in returns true, so it exists. When we deleted this property, operator in returns false, and there is no such property in the object. The next what I want to mention is computed properties. For example, let's ask user for some property. We will ask him and then we will create my object and we will use property name what user put, for example, and after that let's console log my object. So how it works? Right now we do not know name of a property, a key. This key will put user and then we will use this key. So let's run. So we ask, for example, okay, we will ask for a property. Let's put it age and let's click OK. And what do we see? Result, we created property, we created object, and key is age. It's what we put from the prompt. So it's calculated property. It means that when we create object, we do not know a name of this key. It will be calculated. How we can use it in more real example? For example, when we have some property, its name, and let's assign some value. For example, this way. And we can calculate. For example, we can also change it. For example, let's create iterator. It will be 1. And for property we can use Let's do it in this case. And now we see that we have my age 1. And if we will have a few different properties, let's run. So we see that we have 3 different properties in the object, but here we're using the same constructor. So based on some calculated field, we can create new property. Also, we can put it into the loop, for example, for, and create this object based on for loop. Another sample, what I want to mention, it's property value shorthand. So usually we create, when we are using objects, we are using some values to put these values into the object, for example. And when we create object, we are using name, it's name, and age, for example, and let's run it. So we see that we have properties name, age, and ECTuber, but object property shorthand, it means, for example, in case we are using key and a value of variable and they are the same, we can do it shorter. We can just delete second part. So in case if we have property name, after that we have comma, and name, we have variable with the same name, it means that in this object key will be name, will be calculated field based on name of this value, and the value for this key will be value of this variable. So if we have name, we will create key property with name, and the value of this property will be maximum. The same for age. We create key age, and the value will be value of this variable 27. Let's run it. It works. Very often we are using this approach in functions when we can return some object. For example, we want to return this object and the name will be name, age, let's run it. So we see that maximum name, age is ECTuber true. Okay, the next what I want to mention, it's for in loop. For example, sometimes we need to go through all properties we have in our object, and how we can do it. Let's leave our max, and there is special loop, it's for in. Let's call key in max. So in this loop, on each iteration, in key will be saved the name of a key in our object, and we can get access by max key. It's important we cannot use dot notation, we need just to use square brackets, because of key it calculated fields based on the iteration. Let's run. The same. As we see, it's not an object, it's primitive values, maximum, age, and true. And also we can use, for example, with our backsticks, key and value. Let's run. Name, age, so we see we can access to the key and value for this key. And the last what I wanted to mention is methods. So in objects there are two parts in object. It's property, it's just a value what we save, and methods, it's some functions. We already know what is a function, and let's create some function. For example, say hello. It will be a function. Let's call it And now we want to call this function. For example, we call max, say hello, and we need to execute this function. Let's run it. So we see that key will be the same name of property, but value it's a function, and we can execute this function. It means we created method of this object. We can put here any function, and the bit shorter way without function word. Do not forget to put comma after property, after method, and let's try. And let's run it. Yes, so there are two options how we can create function. It's a short way and the full way. Also, we can use arrow functions for creating function. Let's try it. Comma, of course. And let's call this. Again, let's execute, and we see we have my name is Maxim, but in our case my name we hard coded how we can get value of name. So for this we have this special word in object. It works a bit other in comparing with other programming languages, but for now what we will use, we can get to access to any property in our object by this reference for our current project right now, this name. So let's try. So it doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? Because of it's some specific of arrow functions. But let's try in usual function. Let's run again. And here we see that for usual function, for this method, we can get access to properties in our object Maxim. So we get name, this name, from this property. With arrow functions, it doesn't work in this way, and we will talk later about arrow functions, and I will describe why it doesn't work. So, but right now we need to know that we have this special word this, which is a reference to our object, and we can get any data from this object. So if you want to get more information about objects, take a look in the description, there are some additional information. So don't forget to subscribe my channel, like this video, and soon will be more interesting videos about JavaScript.